Okay, all this website is like a compilation of the disadvantages that men have, and an attempt to look at the idea that we really need to engage with the parliamentary process, because if we don't, the feminists are going to continue to change the laws. So the objective is we work towards ensuring that laws and other directives or advice by coming from the UK government maintain a gender-neutral balance, which, as everybody knows, they are not doing at the moment. Now, it's a bit of a tall order, so I'm not expecting that we achieve a great deal, so both in their content and in their implementation. So the origin is, what's the origin of this? About this time, 2 years ago, I am virtually suicidal as a result of the way I've been treated by a couple of different women, including one in a relationship. And it occurs to me, while I'm lying there thinking about my life is useless, that these strange things that happen to me could be explained if I assume that the women involved don't have empathy for the way I'm feeling. They're perfectly nice people, but they're just not empathising with me. And I get up and I go and do a Google search and say, women not empathising with men. Now, you might laugh, you know all this from much longer than me, but this is a complete revelation to me. You know, it's like a genuine red pill moment, because you know, suddenly my life flashes before me and I reinterpret it in a different light. So I do the Google search and I come across empathy gap, and I really go, oh my God, there's other people who actually have understood this far better than me, and the red pill and all the rest of it. And then, so last year I was just like educating myself, and then finally I get to then I reassess what had happened to me in 1995 over my separation and divorce. I realised that and some other things could also be best explained if the female involved simply could empathise with the way I was feeling. So come this year, I want to do something. So what do I do? So luckily for me, back in the 80s, I was an environmental campaigner. And in those days, things were very similar to the way that the men's rights movement is today. That is, hardly anybody knew about it, and you got a hostile response. Also, the greenies who I was involved with had a view of the parliamentarians that they might be some sort of enemy, and there was no point in getting engaged with them. But what I found is when I did get engaged with the parliamentary process, I found MPs to be, firstly, not very clever, definitely not in the top set. Secondly, as far as green issues were going then, and with men's rights issues today, they are largely ignorant. They're not actually hostile. Notice that, the name of our friendly MP, what's his name? Philip Davis, yeah. Notice that Philip Davis actually still gets elected. And when he's there seems to be some myths around that if you even open your mouth, you're going to get thrown into some sort of feminist hell. But in fact, it isn't necessarily the case like that. So they're ignorant of the issues. That's certainly true of the men's rights issues. And they are much more open to ideas than most of the Green movement, and I think now today, of our men's rights issues. They're much more open to the ideas, but it takes absolutely years for these things to take place, because it's a long slog, because it's a cultural change. That is, we shouldn't expect things to happen quickly, but that if we don't take action, they won't happen at all. So what I found in the men's movement is a similar attitude towards MPs, that actually they're some sort of enemy, when in fact I would say they were simply ignorant. So first thing I looked at was the domestic abuse bill, and the first thing we did this with the Mankind Initiative. 100% of the press coverage assumes that women are the victims. And then when the bill gets to Parliament, they have a select committee. 20 women's groups write in saying that it's a gendered issue. 2 men's groups, one of which was me, wrote in, and 1 female researcher put in the opposite point of view. Now, they're just going to get away. If we carry on like this, they will just get away with it. It's not primarily because there's this famous saying, the only thing needed for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. And I would say the only thing needed for the feminists to succeed is for men to do nothing. And we need to stop grumbling about it and start doing something else. So, next thing we find is the select committee is nearly all female. And then we find that the women's groups have not only sent in the most written, but they've also managed to organise themselves to go and give verbal evidence to the committee. And they just sit there, one after the other, telling lies. They continuously say, they've all agreed, they're going to say that domestic abuse is a gendered crime, and they want the view changed. Not only that, we get the new Domestic Abuse Commissioner, as William Collins pointed out, and she has also told the next committee along that it is a gendered crime, despite the evidence. People are not speaking up simply for the evidence. So on the Equi-Law website, we've simply put together, somebody, I think Mike Buchanan put me onto this originally, there are 6 laws which discriminate directly against men, and there are none against women. But as William Collins pointed out, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that they're implemented in a discriminatory way. And so there are 10 laws or so which are implemented to disadvantage men. For instance, sentencing and the access to legal aid, for instance. And there are at least 10 other ways in which men and boys are disadvantaged, not by the law, just by the way we've come, like in education, achievement, and the rate of suicide, for instance. So the issues which I've covered on the website, and which I want MPs to be more aware of, are just the normal agenda issues. So it seems to me that what we need to do far more, instead of talking to each other, is we need to challenge the lies. Because although people say that feminism is an ideology, usually if you're up against an ideologist, they will give back an ideological answer. But when you challenge feminists, all they do is come back with lies. That is, that the lies are that we live in a patriarchy, that society is organised to the male advantage. Yes, thank you very much. 97% of industrial accidents are men, etc. We know them all. We know the stuff about the gender pay gap. We know that's a lie. At all sorts of levels, it's a lie. And the domestic violence is a gendered crime, etc., etc. There are a whole list of blatant untruths which are holding the present situation in place. Unless we start to address those on a systematic basis. Now, if you remember, think about if you're selling a new product, you would not expect to put an advert in the newspaper and sell lots of products on your very first advert. Advertising people know that you've got to repeat things again and again from different times until the people, you don't even notice that the product's on the shelf until you've heard about it several times, hopefully from different positions. So similarly, we should not expect that simply because we get up and tell somebody, say write to our MP and tell them something, that it will even register. It won't register until they've heard it at least 3 times and hopefully from different people. That's only register, that's not even winning. So we just need to be, I think, a whole lot more active. Also, I think we need to challenge, not provoke. For instance, it's very easy to get a hostile response because we're angry by saying feminism is cancer. Now, that's fine for us to say to each other, but if you're trying to persuade this kind of whole bulk of people, sorry, I don't know the name of the previous speaker, but I agree with what he said, is that we are being held hostage by a very small minority of people. The people we really want to talk to is not those people who are holding us hostage, but the vast majority of people who are at the moment silenced. I think we can be, what I've experienced in the last 2 years is if you say 20% more girls than boys go to university, you don't get any hostile response from anybody. Everybody thinks that's a bad idea. If you say men get 3 times the sentence, they actually experience 3 times the sentence of a woman for exactly the same crime. I haven't met anybody who thinks that's a good idea. That is, you get a supportive response. And if you say 3 out of 4 suicides are male, nobody says, oh great, the less men the better. Well, it's very, very few. So, the point is that the feminists are actively changing our laws now. And if we don't organise better, they were going to continue to do so. So if you're interested, there's my email address at the bottom. The website is Equi-Law, it's equi-law.uk. And if you're interested, catch me in the next couple of hours or send me an email. Thank you very much.